Bear with me on this Saturday, because I'm feeling a little outraged today, and I'm trying to contain it with a smile. And I know many of you have asked this same question. How many more women do illegal immigrants need to rape, maim, kill, murder, slaughter before we start implementing real, strong border policies? Before people start realizing that the Biden administration is the cause for thousands of grieving Americans. Rachel Morin, right in my backyard in Maryland, a mother of 5, was killed by an illegal immigrant. Laken Riley, remember her back February 22nd of this year? A college student at the University of Georgia was killed by an illegal immigrant. How many other cases of dead women and children are there that have gone unreported? How many? Want to hear an interesting fact? According to the United States Customs and Border Protection, the number of non-citizen homicides and manslaughters remain at a steady 3 killings per year between 2016 and 2020. Then all of a sudden, in 2021, the Biden administration's first year in power, that number jumped to 60 and then 62 the following year. Did you know that so far this year, 20 people have been killed by non-citizens? Sex offenses also jumped from 156 in Trump's last year to 488 in Biden's first year alone. And you know what? The numbers don't lie. Today, there are 170 people, 170, who are dead, who would have been alive had it not been for their despicable open border policies. Despicable. Every American family grieving for a loved one has one singular person to blame for all of this: Joe Biden. He has allowed killers, rapists, and other violent criminals to run around this country victimizing innocent people and their communities. And yet, what do? They make it more, they give them more leeway to come into our nation. I asked this question of my brother Sam FADDIS, which is why he's on today. Why? And I asked this question of Michael Yan, who's on today. Michael, why does this continue to happen?
Shall I start, Sam, or would you like to start?
Sam.
I can talk about the Darien Gap.
No, Sam.
All right, I'll take first swing. Look, Armstrong, I like your tone, because it's time for people to be angry and cut the crap, excuse my language, and let's just speak some truth. We are not trying to control the border. Our policy is that we have no border. They won't say that out loud. They'll lie through their teeth and they'll blow smoke. But we don't have a border. And actually, as Michael Yan points out all the time, it's actually much worse than that, because we're not just letting the people walk across once they get here. We operate a conveyor belt of camps across Central America. We fund UN programs. We now have regional processing centers in Central America. We've made it possible for these guys using the CB1 app to fly directly into the country. We can't get these guys here fast enough in large enough numbers. And the folks behind this it's all very deliberate. They're not trying to stop them and failing folks. This is their policy. And the bottom line is they do not care. Look, my grandfather was a Democratic congressman in the 30s and 40s. He was a New Deal Democrat because he was a poor white guy in Southwest Pennsylvania, and the Democratic Party was the working man's party to him. That party ceased to exist a long time ago. This is the party of a handful of elitists and oligarchs. And the bottom line is they don't care. It doesn't matter what your skin color is. You are irrelevant. You can die, you can starve, you can be murdered, raped, abused. It doesn't matter.
You know, let me just stay with you here for a minute, because you are the former head of the CIA's Weapon of Mass Destruction Terrorism Unit. Can you elaborate on the major factors that have contributed to both the rise and the fall of the CIA's influence in global affairs?
Well, I mean, simultaneously you have I'll just use the term politicization of the CIA that has intensified. I mean, it's been underway for some time, but particularly since the Obama administration has intensified. So you have the CIA involved in all kinds of things it shouldn't be involved in, right? CIA is supposed to collect intelligence and conduct covert action when the president tells it to. Otherwise, it has no political function, and it's not a policy entity, but yet it's up to its eyeballs in that all the time now. Simultaneously, it has lost its capacity to do what it's supposed to do. I mean, in the news these days, we're talking a lot about the status of the Iranian nuclear program and whether the Iranians actually already have nuclear weapons or are about to acquire them. I would bet you a large sum of money that if you were in a position to sit down at CIA and say, tell me all your sources that you have inside the Iranian nuclear weapons program, that the answer would be, we don't have a single boy inside the Iranian nuclear weapons program. We don't actually really know at all what its status is. And I think you would go target by target. So it's terrifying. They're doing a lot of stuff they shouldn't be doing. And meanwhile, they're not doing what they get paid to do.
You know, Michael Yan, you're a seasoned war correspondent, man. You put your life on the line every day. How do you perceive the evolution of the CIA's role in conflict zones over the past few decades? And what are the things that you're seeing every day in a different kind of war zone that's going to really have an incredible impact on weakening the infrastructures that we've had in place for some time here in our country?
Well, I mean, as Sam alluded to, the only reason I even exist doing the things that I do is because the CIA is incompetent and the media is incompetent, or they're completely compromised. For instance, the amount of time I've taken 50 or 60 people down into the Darien Gap between Colombia and Panama, including congressmen, intelligence people, big media, that sort of thing. We put it on the map specifically to work to close it down. And the incoming Panamanian president put the Darien Gap onto his platform to get elected, and now he is elected. And the reason that he was able to get elected on that platform in the Darien Gap was because of the work that we do. I mean, that should be the work of our government, but since they don't do it, private citizens have to get out here and do it. The Darien Gap is one of the main invasion routes to the United States. And when you opened up, Armstrong, the United Nations, using the IOM, the International Organization for Migration, they're the main engine of the invasions, IOM, the UN IOM. They hand out condoms. They hand out actual rape kits. I have a couple of them. And those rape kits contain female condoms, male condoms, those abortion after day pills or whatever, and a little flashlight. And if you go out into the jungle in the Darien Gap, the jungle floor is littered with condoms. It's just unbelievable. Thousands of condoms on the jungle floor handed out by the United Nations because the aliens rape each other, right? The rape is coming from the invaders. I'm calling them what they are. We have to use the exact proper terminology when we're talking about things. One of the things that our enemies do so well is capture words. Capturing words is like capturing hilltops. We have to use accurate words. We can't call it, irregular migration or border crisis. We have no border crisis. It's not a crisis. It's a war, and we have no border. I've been across the entire border from one to the other. On Texas, from Boca Chica, where SpaceX is, all the way to San Diego, much of that on the Mexican side and the entire American side. Been up to Canada looking at that border, which is the biggest land border in the world. Been over at Bahamas looking at that. China has bought, Bahamas is another border a lot of people don't realize. And people come in from the Bahamas every day, including Chinese. The Chinese are building a huge embassy over there. We just went over and took a look at it a few months ago. They've got a port right off the coast of Florida. You can see it on Google Earth. It's a big port. We went over there. China, and they're also taking Antigua and Grenada. We are being surrounded. There was a frenemy, let's say, ambassador about 10 days ago or so said down in Panama privately, he told someone that China is just showering Panama with money, but the United States is absent, which we know that, of course. But we're basically ceding this territory. You go up to El Salvador, which I was up there some months ago. China built a giant library in downtown San Salvador, which is the capital of Salvador. Got a big old Chinese communist flag flying right out front. I spent half a day in that library built by the Chinese. It's a big brainwashing center. Bukele definitely cleaned up the streets. I would actually recommend El Salvador as a vacation spot, and I would take your family, actually. But it's taken by China, right? And so we see this step after step through Central America. The United States has just abandoned it. And so the same is happening here in Japan. I'm in Japan right now. People ask me all the time, why are you here or why are you there? They were asking me why I was in Darien Gap. I was in Darien Gap because it's the main invasion route. And I was there before it became that, right? Likewise in Netherlands. I spent so much time in Netherlands because it's vital terrain. And likewise here in Japan. Today, right outside my window, is the Yokohama baseball stadium. They're going to be doing a jab event today. Actually, there's another self-amplifying mRNA jab that's being rolled out in October. They're actually already jabbing some people with it. It's self-amplifying. They're manufacturing it in Fukushima Prefecture of all places, and this thing is absolutely dangerous. That's why I'm here, because Japan. All these different components, whether it's the food war, the chicken factories burning down in the United States, chicken farms, same thing's happening here. Chicken farms burning down. Same thing's happening here with the farmers being knocked off their land. This place is actually being invaded too by the United Nations IOM.
Hold that for us, Michael. I'm Armstrong Williams, and we'll be back. Sam, you have vast experience in the intelligence, and you're able to analyze it quite quickly. And I know you're definitely the person that can assess the Biden administration's approach to handling domestic and international crises. But before you even address that, what are your intelligence sources telling you about ISIS-K already being in America and posing a serious threat?
They're here. They and a whole bunch of other guys are here. Look, let's just stick with ISIS-K just as an example, because a concrete example is always better for illustration purposes. These guys are basically the dudes who think that the other guys in the jihad business are too mellow and taking too long to getting around to just killing people in large numbers. So that's really what ISIS-K is about these days. These are the guys who want to rock and roll right now, and they don't want to hear anything about delaying. Within that group, speaking very broadly, the Tajiks are are known to be the guys that are the cutting edge of the cutting edge, right? These are the guys that killed at least 141 people, whatever the final body count was in Moscow in the concert. All the guys that were just arrested in 3 different cities in the States are Tajiks. Okay, well, but there's no mystery about this. We know this. They say about every 5 seconds that they're going to hit us. They're all over the world. And we know that the number of Tajiks coming across the southern border into the United States, yes, Tajiks from Tajikistan, out of Central Asia, all the way across the southern border into the United States. And I'm not talking like they had to stow away on a freighter. They buy packages via known travel agencies in Istanbul. Like, this is big business, right? They're moved here by the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. They're crossing the border, and that's just the ones we know about. So, I mean, I could go on down that list, but my point is, there's no mystery, there's no ambiguity. You don't have to like think that maybe there's a possibility that these guys are coming. We know they're coming in very large numbers, and we know precisely what they intend. And we might have randomly picked up like 8 guys. That doesn't begin to suggest that those were the only 8 guys, or we even know what they were up to. So the danger of massive terrorist attacks by that group and by any number of other groups is off the charts, which is why even a guy like Christopher Wray, the head of FBI, for whom I don't have a lot of respect, but even him, man, about every 48 hours, he gives another press conference and says, one more time for the record, every red light on the board is blinking, the threat level's off the charts, a lot of people are gonna die. And what does the Biden administration do? If they do anything, they intensify their efforts to move more people into the country. They don't respond in any rational fashion to any of that.
You know,
so an average person can tell you what's going to happen. You don't have to be a CIA guy to know how this story ends.
You know, I noticed that the mainstream media is doing everything it can to sell us on the wonders of DEI, because obviously that's what wokeness and the left continue to push. But talk about how big of a threat now that DEI has made its way into the intel community.
Yeah, look, this is crippling and it's nonsensical. I mean, nonsensical is the kindest word I could use, right? And you and I have talked about this kind of issue many times before. If I got 8 guys in my station, my CIA office, someplace in the middle of the Middle East working terrorism, I do not care where their ancestors came from. If that's 8 white heterosexual guys and they're kicking butt and getting the job done, oh, great. If that's 8 black guys, all of whose families originally came from West Africa, I don't care. I don't care who they sleep with. I don't care about any of that. Only one thing matters. In a really, really, really tough business, do you know your job? And honestly, my entire career downrange, as it is in the military, that's the way it always was. Nobody was wasting any time pointing fingers at each other based on skin color or ethnicity or sexual orientation. They had only one standard. Can you do it? Can you keep me alive? Can you keep other Americans alive? We don't, that's gone now. Now, and DEI is not just like you celebrate it for a day or two and then you just go back to work. No, this increasingly, you're like in Soviet style, the extent to which you take on board the ideology, live the ideology, and join the revolution, that's really the criteria that determines, will you get promoted? So your boss in Islamabad who's trying to keep track of whether the Taliban is going to get Pakistani nuclear weapons is not some hard-edged operator who's been doing this for 25 years, speaks 5 languages, and recruited 50 sources. It's somebody who kissed the ring back home now, and it doesn't matter anymore whether they know what they're doing.
So Michael Vaughn, talk about the threats across the borders, and talk about your thoughts on the most unconventional or unexpected policies of this administration that have impacted both our nation and global politics. But talk about what you see that threaten us right here in the interior of our nation.
That was for me, Armstrong. There was a slight break.
Of course it's for you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, across the border, I mean, I see Tajiks all the time. I see Iranians every day. I see Afghans every single day, sometimes 200 or 300, even 400 one day, as I recall. I mean, this is unbelievable. The numbers that we see just through Darien Gap. That does not include the other routes that I go to, right? And I want to say very clearly, again, why I'm in Japan right now. It's happening here too. It's happening to our allies. This is a comprehensive war we're involved in, and the weaponized quote unquote migration is just one component. Food is another component. We're being strangled down on food. I've been warning about this since January and February of 2020. And I've been going to these farms in different countries like Netherlands or here in Japan and watching how these things are being strangled down, right? Now, when the food supplies decrease, the prices go up, that increases something called HOP, human osmotic pressure. The human osmotic pressure is the push and the pull of migration. So as these routes are opened up, and I mean really opened up through the Darien Gap, for instance, in between Colombia and Panama, that route is really vibrant now. When I first started going down there about 2 weeks after Biden was installed, the route was more of a trickle. But I knew that I thought that they were going to open it up. So I spent about 6 months down there mapping it all out, developing contacts out in the jungle with the Indians and that sort of thing. And so now it's a major route. Here's the thing. If you can get to South America or you're in South America already, you can get to the United States very easily. You just go through the Darien Gap, get on a bunch of buses, and next thing you know, you're walking across borders, Texas or California or whatever, right? But then you're in the United States. Now, go back to food. As we go into these inevitable food issues are coming, and I mean famines. When I say issues, I don't mean that euphemistically. I mean people starving to death. There's going to be a lot of human osmotic pressure that then push them through these routes. For instance, through the Bahamas and other places that are being developed as major invasion arteries and routes, like Canada. Canada's already gone. I was just up in Canada. Spent about, I don't know, a few weeks up there running around from coast to coast in Canada, looking at the different issues. Canada is already gone, essentially gone, as are big parts of Europe. So the bottom line is we don't have the allies that we used to have. They've all been weakened internally while they're running off talking about Ukraine and whatnot. For instance, let's talk about Luxembourg. When I first went to Luxembourg, I was in the U.S. Army, and it was a beautiful place. You could let the kids play out at midnight. It would have been perfectly safe. Not that you would let your kids play at midnight, but they could. And now it's about 50%, about 50%. It's gone. I mean, the downtown streets of Luxembourg City, General Patton and the Third Army is just buried down the road out of Luxembourg City. I went there, I don't know, a couple of years ago looking at Luxembourg, how it's looking now. And luckily the cemetery is still there. But the downtown, there's people doing drugs like at San Francisco or Los Angeles or whatever. And it's the same thing up in Canada. Again, one thing, I was just over in Chinatown here in Yokohama the other day. And I was there, not just moseying around, just kind of sniffing around. I go to Chinatowns all over the world. You go to Chinatown at Vancouver in Canada, and the dragons up there all have 5 claws. I always watch how many claws the dragons have. When the dragon has 5 claws, it means China is claiming that land, right, as their imperial domain, right? If it has 4 claws, it means you're like a cousin, you're a family. If it has 3 claws, it means you're a friend. You go to Okinawa in Japan, and you'll see it has 5 claws. They're claiming that. Now, that's a subtle symbol that most people won't get, but the Chinese get it. We went to a police station at Chinatown in Vancouver, and it's right downtown in Vancouver, and we walked in the police station with the people, with the mainland Chinese police station there. Of course, those are run by MSS, who would be, and United, which actually these would be the counterparts of SAM's. I mean, the CIA, the MSS version is the Ministry of State Security. That's the Chinese version of what SAM did, CIA, right?
Let me go back. Sam, how threatened are we by Russia's activities in Cuba? And how threatened are we by the recent visit of Putin to China? And should we concern ourselves? It seems like all our enemies are organizing against us to build back Putin's empire.
Well, look, I don't think, if you're talking about the immediate movement of a few ships and aircraft to Cuba by the Russians, in relative terms, nobody cares. Like they're not strategically significant. If you take it in context, though, as part of the pattern that you just outlined, and assess the symbolism of it, you ought to really, really, really be worried about it. You'll hear people periodically talk about, like, our enemies, the North Koreans, the Iranians, the Chinese, the Russians, maybe they'll gang up on us. Okay, well, newsflash, guys, that already happened. I mean, there are regular meetings at the very top levels, of the Chinese, the Russians, the North Koreans, the Iranians, the Chinese and the Iranians cooperating in the Middle East. The North Koreans just sold another, I don't know what it was, something like 5 million artillery shells to the Russians. There's been reporting that in exchange, the Russians have given the North Koreans designs for an intercontinental ballistic missile. I mean, we could go on with this all day long. This is not this is one of the problems, I think, generally with the Biden administration, that things have gone wrong so catastrophically, so quickly, that people can't even keep up, like, with the pace of it. I mean, we're in the middle of on the brink of a full-scale regional Middle Eastern war. Most of the time, the press isn't even talking about it. Our administration is mostly fighting with the Israelis, not with the Iranians. We're in a world of hurt. Yes, these people are in fact ganging up on us, and they're making huge headway. In Latin America, it's not just Cuba. I mean, Venezuela is an Iranian base. The Iranians just sold the Venezuelans a whole bunch of missile boats that basically will allow them to do in the Caribbean what the Houthis are doing in the Red Sea, which is all of a sudden start targeting maritime vessels in and out of our largest ports. Again, ask the Biden administration what their response is. The answer is nothing. We're not doing anything about any of these things.
Sam, it's always a pleasure having you and Michael Vine join us. Thank you for joining us. When we return, we're going to turn our attention to AI. I'm Armstrong Williams. We'll be back.
It is easier to build up strong children than to try and repair broken men.
The streets are plagued with crime, violence. There's a lot of poverty, and it's all a result of lack of education that's happening in our schools. So it really is a crisis.
We come from very different political perspectives, but we've come to the same conclusion, and that is there is a crisis in the classroom. Children are being deprived of quality of life because they're being deprived of a good education. We must solve this problem. It's incumbent upon all of us to join hands together to get this done.
We can't afford to wait one more day before we address these issues, because every day we lose another child.
Let's stop the politicking. Let's stop the games. Let's really do something to give these kids a real chance at life and being a part of that American dream.
We need accountability for funding. Many of the districts where you're seeing very low test scores, students graduating with very low literacy and math comprehension rates, they are receiving a lot of funding. So where is the money going where our kids aren't being adequately educated?
If you believe every child is deserving of a quality education, please go to educationjusticefoundation.com.
We're back to the broadcast. The CEO of Tribetan, Joe Paul, the Executive Director of Black Men Vote, and Clyde Vanell, who is an assemblyman in New York and chairs a committee on all things crypto and AI. Clyde, give us an overview of where we are in the AI space, the concerns, and that which gives us hope.
Well, Armstrong, first of all, thank you for having me here. But we are in a space where we have a technology that is basically revolutionizing all aspects of human endeavor, and we're excited that artificial intelligence is creating the opportunity to make things that that were more difficult to do easier now, and that's in almost every field. And we must make sure that we properly harness this power of artificial intelligence. But at the same time, we're worried about a lot of things that a lot of harms that are possible when it comes to this technology. And whenever you're dealing with a technology that can take the place of human decision making, you have to make sure that humans are in the center of what that looks like. Also concerned about when there's artificial intelligence that makes decisions that affect humans, that there aren't any disparate impacts when it comes to that. So there are a lot of things to do. There are a lot of benefits, but a lot of harms that we have to make sure that we protect ourselves from.
Well, certainly, Tiffany, this genie has made his presence known, and it's larger than life. How do you respond to what Assemblyman Fennell had to say about the progress and yet the things that gives us pause?
Yeah, no, I agree, and thank you for having me on the show today. I agree that there are a lot of benefits as well as challenges. And interestingly enough, and like with most things, there's two sides to every coin. So I want to first start with some of the benefits, because a lot of times we focus on the challenges. For one thing, we can understand and make better choices as voters with AI. Candidate matching, so to speak, is a lot easier. You can ask AI a question about how did this congressperson vote or speak on these issues, so that you can make easier choices. I know I have before been in the voting booth Googling people, especially with the down ballot candidates, trying to figure out who they are and what they stand for. There's also a lot of benefit with regards to getting out the vote, like having more people participate in voting. You know, I'm about to release the second edition of Vote Like a Boss, which is all about get out the vote. And with AI, we can do more targeted messaging, more personalized messaging to get people out to vote. We can also use AI to, facilitate detection of fraud and other fake news associated with the election, the presidential election as well as down ballot elections. But all those things I just said can also be weaponized against us. And so in any effort that we're doing to leverage AI, we should always make sure that there are people behind it piloting it, just like there are people behind it creating it.
You know, so is AI going to automate away all the jobs, especially those that are fulfilling to individuals? Is it going to impact the job market? We saw this situation where someone was using robocalls, using fake Joe Biden's voice in an election. Can it not have a devastating impact on the upcoming, not only the presidential elections, but the down ballot?
Yeah, it most certainly can. Armstrong, of course, thank you so much for having me on your show, Joe Paul. It absolutely can. There are positive sides and negative sides to everything, and AI is a tool designed to enhance and innovate, right? So it's not necessarily designed to destruct. It depends on the user. So yes, AI will supplant a lot of jobs, but it'll also create a lot of new ones. So we have to really change the scope of what we think about when we think about work as we introduce artificial intelligence. So the scope of work is going to adjust, right? And so AI is intended to do some of the menial tasks, some of the tasks, the rote tasks, the automatable tasks that you spend so much time doing. AI is able to create it in seconds, especially generative AI. So it's able to create and think. We're fastly approaching 2027, where we're going to get to artificial general intelligence, which is a little scary, but in a good way, and then super intelligence a few years after that. And so yes, it's going to supplant some jobs, but we have to change how we look at our work. We have to really adjust what we think about when we think about AI. AI is not necessarily intended to replace, it's intended to supplement. So you should leverage AI to reduce the amount of time and impact that it takes for you to do something, but it doesn't automatically do the job for you. So you certainly serve as a supervisor to an executive assistant, essentially. That's what artificial intelligence is. So with the increase in access, we're going to have to do a lot about not just digital literacy, but AI literacy and deep fakes and the impact that it's going to have on this election. Folks will not be able to tell in short order the real from the fake.
You know, Tiffany, I'm going to come back to you because you are a global entrepreneur and you have your tentacles in so many things. Doesn't it concern you how AI can forever change military dynamics of wars and weaponry? Does that not frighten you, what it could possibly do?
It doesn't frighten me. Few things frighten me, and I've been in a lot of war zones as an individual. It doesn't frighten me because we as human beings are directing it, creating it, maintaining it, and enhancing it. So I think first off, you know, it goes to the AI literacy that Joe Paul just mentioned. You know, at its foundation, we have to understand there is no separate entity called AI. It does not exist in and of itself, right? It's human-derived intelligence. Humans are involved in every step of the process, and then that's the point in time when you release it. I'm a serial tech entrepreneur, and I've done a lot of big deployments of, you know, new frontier technology over the decades. You know, you release it, right? But at every point along the way, you have to be maintaining it, maintaining the software, maintaining the hardware, even maintaining the power that goes to it. Humans are involved at every step. Even when we get to generalized intelligence, if we're not babysitting it in the beginning, including the hardware and the power and all of that stuff, it will implode on itself. So we really have to look to the people behind the artificial intelligence. A lot of them have been waving flags and sounding alarms, and as you know, someone in the industry, and I'm also getting my Master's of Engineering right now from Cornell University specializing in artificial intelligence. I can tell you that the concern should be the people behind it and making sure that they're accountable. Because the more that they put out there that AI is the separate entity, then the less accountability they have. They are the ones that if we do go off the cliff, will be the ones that take us off the cliff. And we need to learn from when we've introduced things in the past that have had tremendous impact on society, not only our society, but globally, like say, for example, the atomic bomb. We need to think in advance, you know, how we're gonna have the accountability, what are the guardrails gonna be, and start putting them up now. And I'll add before I finish that one of our challenges right now is that a lot of our leaders don't, on both sides of the aisle, don't understand tech in general, let alone this advanced tech. So I'll also put out there that in the future, the way we expect people to know about policy and the Constitution and or have business experience, that our future leaders need to be extremely tech literate as well as literate in this type of tech.
Now, you know, Clyde, she raises some even deeper concerns, actually, and it has to do with the moral and ethical implications of AI, because we've seen firsthand that no matter what human beings sometimes input into AI, it overrides it and goes with its own mind and its own decision, which goes to show you, even now, it shows you that eventually you can't control it.
Well, a couple of things. So, you know, we may get to that point. Right now, we're not dealing with, so, you know, you're talking about right now, as Tiffany stated and as Brother Paul stated, right now, humans are creating artificial intelligence, right? So, and we're at, if I can talk about it, we're at probably level one or level 2 artificial intelligence, meaning the artificial intelligence that we generally talk about is programs that can categorize, that can write LLMs, right, large language models that can write and that can assume the next word or next phrase. When we talk about generative AI is a higher level of categorization where it can organize and process really fast. but it's not foolproof. But you know what you're talking about, Armstrong, is general intelligence, right? Eventually, we're going to get to a point where the programs can program themselves, and Tiffany alluded to, we have to make sure that these programs and these processes are human-centric. I've watched, you know, I'm a big sci-fi geek, and you know, one of the things that we have to keep in mind is certain rules of AI, certain rules of robotics, to make sure that humans are in the center of it. Do not harm humans, and that we control what this technology does. Now, keep in mind, we have to make sure that with this technology and this is not new, we have to make sure that when humans create new things like artificial intelligence, we have to make sure that we have the proper guardrails. And again, we're talking a lot about the doom. There are so many benefits to this technology that we are using, you know, that we're using every day, that your people using, that all of our listeners and the folks that are viewing use on their phone and use on their devices, that we're using this in healthcare, we're using AI in education, we're using AI in every field. And we are really excited about all of the things that AI has provided for us at this point and what's happening in the near future. But as anything, we need to have the proper guardrails.
I'm Armstrong Williams, and we'll be back.
As a home buyer, you need a lender who cares about your home ownership dreams. United Security Financial has been helping families secure their dream homes for 30 years. We're a national fair practice lender that provides affordable mortgages and low down payment programs to eligible home buyers. To learn how United Security Financial can help you secure your dream home, call 1-800-373-4186.
I have a personal story with artificial intelligence. You know, I had a former disgruntled employee who's able to create my voice in a conversation with the government of a country that had a profound impact on an election. And what they did also was create this background noise, so if you didn't know my voice, you could not really tell it was me, and it looked like my lips were moving, and it created, and I'm telling you, it impacted an election. And so I'm not just talking, I'm talking from first-hand experience. And where did we go this? Will there ever be a time where there's you can commandeer data? Are we gonna have artificial minds? Where's it going? I mean, and I'm just...
Look, that's a great point. So we're really concerned about deep fakes. Now the technology provides itself where you can take someone's voice. You can take a few seconds of someone's voice and create audio for them to say almost anything, which happened to you. You can create video to be able to do so. We're very concerned in New York State. We're very concerned because we see what's happening in this presidential election. In this presidential election, candidates, their campaigns, and other folks are creating content that are deep fakes, and people are believing it. And we're very, very concerned about that. New York State, we passed a law to be able to prevent the use of deep fakes when it comes to campaign literature and campaign content. Also, we passed a law to say that you have to put a disclaimer in your content saying that you use deep fake, you use artificial intelligence when it comes to creating some of this content. But people are getting fooled, bamboozled, and brainwashed by these deep fakes.
And listen, right in our backyard in Maryland, a principal was accused of being a racist. They created a voice of this man using the most vile racism. He was fired. He was fired. And then 6 months later, after the investigation, they realized it was all fake.
It happens.
Yeah, I think we need to develop technology and tools and leverage the AI, as I was mentioning in the opening segment, to detect the fraud and fake faster, like as fast as it's happening. Also as it's happening real time. So if you look to the muse of the music industry, whereas if you play copyrighted music on YouTube, they will shut down the feed. It takes now the algorithm seconds to figure that out. We can do things like that as well with regards to deep fake and voice tech, but there has to be sort of an economic incentive or some sort of motivation to invest in that type of technology. Also, in the meantime, as was mentioned about the laws in New York City, we need to have more penalty with regards to these things in all forms, right? So there's the deep fake, there's also the attacks on our digital border. I think our digital border and all that's happening there is much more of a threat even than our southern border. You can very efficiently and effectively take down a country with some of these technologies. And when people or governments or entities attack using digital tools, we should treat it as seriously as if they were using a nuclear weapon and have the response be as strong, including to individuals. We don't have the laws or the penalties yet at the level that they need to be to discourage people from tossing out a fake.
Joe Paul, there are these AI-driven tools or platforms that are currently being developed to aid political candidates in reaching and persuading voters.
Yes, there are tons of them. I want to echo what the other panel members have said.
And Tiffany, yeah.
Yes, of course, Clyde and Tiffany. I want to echo. This is not just restricted to U.S., right? This year, we're going to have over 50 countries who are electing officials. And so you're seeing it in India, you're seeing it in the European Union, you're seeing it here. And you have to understand that the bad actors don't necessarily have to be stateside, right? Russia has an interest, China has an interest in dividing the United States, because divide and conquer is a real thing. And so we have to understand that these tools exist. What's even worse is all you need is a couple $100, right? And you can create a deep fake, you can create a video, you can make something up, you can spread misinformation and disinformation. What we have to be aware is we have to make sure that we first understand who the source, who is it coming from, right? And you have to use critical thinking, which is a lost art nowadays. But you have to think critically. When you look at this piece of information, you have to juxtapose it with this piece of information and that piece of information and find the truth somewhere in the middle. And so there are tons of tools that are being developed, but on the other side, there are also some good tools, right? So again, it's not the tool, it's the actor, right? So there are some good uses of AI. We're using it to really understand and tailor-make our marketing campaigns to meet the voter where they are. And so depending on the information that we have, where they are, where they live, some of the demographic information that we have, we can curate really bespoke marketing communication pieces that speaks directly to that user. And we can do 100 different ones. You have generative AI that can create text messages. And so back in the day, even if you look at social media, there needs to be more controls overall. And the government, as Tiffany mentioned, the government's not doing enough, and it's because they don't know what to do. They don't even understand this technology, right? Just take a look at some of the hearings when Facebook is up there. They don't even know what the right questions to ask. And so how can you control something that you don't understand? And so we need to have much more guardrails around this technology.
I know there are other things that you want to discuss, Tiffany, but does AI and robots being weaponized concern you?
Well, you say concern me. I'm a techie, and so I understand a lot of the technology behind what these things can do and how it's created. So I don't get so much concerned about it. I get more activated around what we need to do to counter it or to manage it. So, for example, with we see everything that's going on right now with Boeing and the and
they can't get their guys out of space.
Right.
That's a
whole other thing.
That's
right?
a whole
But
scary.
I fly so much. I know you do as well, Armstrong. And a lot of them are Boeing planes. And the world, not just our country, are very, very much concerned about the safety for when we step on these planes. Like, is a door going to blow off, et cetera? And we have the FAA that has oversight over not only Boeing, but Lockheed Martin and all these other...
Let me stop you a minute, because you brought up Boeing. And you know what? I have been just obsessed with what's happening there. No one would have ever thought that Elon Musk and SpaceX would have gone to the moon back and forth so much, and with little or no problem. Everybody thought Boeing would set the standard.
it would be the juggernaut. What is it? What happened?
Well, maybe in the past it would have been. Like as a 9 times founder, I can tell you every company takes on, and countries, right, take on the personality, the standards, the values, the culture that's set by the leader. And so maybe the Boeing CEO and chairman of the board of 20 or 30 years ago would have been able to do that, but what they have right now is something different. And you'll find in a lot of companies, because you and I, Armstrong, are old enough to remember when there was the rise of shareholder activism. And when that took place, especially taking hold in the 80s and the 90s, the whole ecosystem of any company or market was focused then on the shareholder, which then became about the quarterly earnings and the money, blah, 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 blah. But very few companies, and I'm going to say this as a self-made person, right? Very few companies are in the business of making money. They're actually in the business of something else. Like you're in the media business, or you could be in the cookie business, or you can be in the tech business, and you're supposed to do whatever you do so well that you make money from it. There's a finance industry, but that's the only industry that's in the business of making money. Every other industry has started to lose sight of that, including aerospace, including Boeing. And to almost no fault of his own, the CEO, because he is in a culture, a corporate culture, where it's all about the shareholder. The rest of the ecosystem, the customers, the end users, the employees, do not matter anymore.
What you just said was profound. And it's so true. The only problem here is that we're out of time. That is the problem. I could just go on. It's rare when I want to go on with the broadcast. Tiffany, Joe Paul, Clyde Vanell, thank you so much for joining us. And just promise us that we will come back and talk about this not for 30 minutes, but for a full hour, because there's so much to talk about, and it has so many critical ramifications. And obviously, all of you have spent so much time understanding this and mastering it, but do you actually master it? Well, in some aspects, not all. Thank you for joining us. I'm Armstrong Williams.